is for the selection tools assignment. So the point of this assignment is to show you some different ways to make selections in Photoshop. They have a bunch of different tools that you can use for this. There's going to be 7 that we are specifically focusing on for this assignment, and they are listed right here in the assignment: rectangular marquee, elliptical marquee, lasso, magnetic lasso, polygonal lasso, quick selection tool, and magic wand. So those are the 7 selection tools we are going to try out in this selection tool assignment. So I am going to just follow these steps that are outlined in the Canvas assignment. I'll keep this open and I'll jump back and forth through Photoshop to reference this assignment, and that is how I suggest that you complete your assignment as well. So I'm going to just use any image I've taken this semester just to try out. So it doesn't matter really what photo it is, because we're really focusing on the selection tools. So I have a photo here that I am going to use. So now I want to create a new document that is these dimensions, 8.5 by 11 with 300 resolution. So I'm going to go back to Photoshop, File, New, 8.5 inches, 11, 300 resolution. So now I have this blank document, but let me redo that because I want it to be white, not black. So here I will show that is white. Cool. Still 8.5, 11, 300 resolution. Alrighty. So now I have this tab up here, Untitled 1. That's my blank document. And then I have this other tab that is my photo. So now I'm going to go back to the assignment, see what the next thing is. So I am going to start with the first tool and just try it out. So my first tool is the rectangular marquee tool. So if I come over here to the left side of my toolbox, if I hover over, there we go, there's my rectangular marquee tool. So I'll click on it, and then I'm going to click and drag on my photo, and those black and white lines that it's creating, those are called marching ants, and that just shows me what the selection tool is selecting. So when I let go, there we go, there's the marching ants, so it is going to select that photo. So now let's see what my next step is. Okay, so I made the selection tool. Now I need to click on my keyboard Control and the letter J to make a new layer of that selection. So if I come back here, I'm going to hit Control J, and when I do that, take a look down in the bottom right hand corner at my layer palette. See how now there's a new layer, and if I turn off the eyeball on the background layer, it shows me that I created a layer of just that selection. So if I grab my Move tool, I can click on layer 1 down here in the bottom right corner in the layer palette, and while I'm clicking, drag up to the tab that is my blank document, still holding it, drag down, let go, and then there it is. Right now it's way too big, so with my Move tool selected, I'm going to make sure that I have Show Transform Controls on. What that does is it puts these little anchors on the corners so that I can make it smaller. And then I hit the check mark, and I want it kind of smaller because if we look back at the assignment, this is an example of what I'm creating. So all of these cutouts are on an 8.5 by 11 document. So I want to make sure that I can fit all 7 onto the document. So now that I have that, then I'm going to use the Type tool, and I'm going to label the tool I use, and I'm going to explain how it works. So this explanation is just going to be in my own words. So I'm going to click on the Type tool, the capital T, black font. So right here, I'm going to name it rectangular marquee. And then I'll say something like, click and drag to make rectangular I'm going to go down to the next line. Rectangular selections of an image. Something like that. And I'll click on the Move tool and put it somewhere so that it fits. I can also double click on it and maybe make this font a little bit smaller so that, again, I have room for all 7 of the different tools. Cool. So now I want to go back to my image, and this step is super important. If you skip this step I'm about to show, you will be super frustrated because it's not going to be working correctly. So if you remember back when I made the selection, I hit Control J to make a new layer, and you can see down in my layer palette I am still highlighted on that layer. To move on to my next tool, I want to make sure that I'm highlighted back on the background layer, or else I'll get all screwed up. So super important. You cannot skip this step. Make sure you click back on the background layer before you do the next tool. So now that I've clicked back on the background layer, I'm going to look back at my assignment, and so I just did rectangular marquee. So my next one is elliptical marquee. So if I go over here, look at my toolbox, okay, rectangular marquee. Next one's lasso, and I remember the assignment talking about lasso, so I know I'm not there yet. If you notice, right underneath the rectangular marquee, there's a little arrow pointing down. What that's telling me is that there's a couple different options within that tool hidden in there. The way I can see them is I just right-click on the tool, and then it brings up this menu. So now I can see, okay, there's elliptical marquee. I'm not going to use the single row or single column, but I do want that elliptical marquee. So I'm going to click that, make a selection. I'm going to see what it does, and then I'm going to hit Control J so that just like before, it made a new layer of that selection. And then same process, I'm going to click on that new layer, drag it over. It's way too big, so I'm going to click on the Move tool, make sure my Show Transform Controls is turned on, make it smaller. Hit OK, click on the Type tool. I'm going to name this one elliptical marquee. Then I'm going to put something like click and drag to make circular selections of an image, because that seems like that's what it does to me. So then I'll click on the Move tool. And the reason I'm doing this is that I want to have this own document just for myself, so that going forward, if I'm wanting to do a specific selection of an image, I can reference this to see which selection tool is going to work best for whatever I'm trying to do at that time. So this is just a good reference for you. So now I've done rectangular marquee, I've done elliptical marquee. Now I'm going to do the lasso. And just like how I got to the rectangular marquee, kind of same thing with the lasso. There's a little arrow, so if I right click on it, there's the lasso tool, the polygonal lasso tool, and the magnetic lasso tool. So I'm going to be using all 3 of those to complete this assignment. So I'll start with the lasso tool, and I'll click, and I'm clicking and dragging, and then it made that selection. But I just realized I forgot to click on the background layer. So I'm going to click back on that background layer before I do the Control J. Luckily I caught it before I tried to hit Control J, and then I would have really realized that I screwed up. I'm going to bring it over, Move tool, Show Transform Controls, so on and so forth. So I'm going to keep doing this process until I get all 7 of the tools. If you hover over the tools, you see that this little window pops up that says Lasso tool, kind of explains what it is, and then it says Learn How. If any of these tools are confusing and you can't just play with it and kind of figure out what it does, click on this Learn How, and it actually gives you a little tutorial that gives you some more information on that specific tool. So if you're struggling trying to figure out what the selection tool actually does, use this built-in feature of just hovering the mouse over the tool, and then when this little information window pops up, click on that Learn How, and it will help kind of walk you through what the next step is. The last two, so I'm going to do that for lasso, polygonal lasso, and magnetic lasso. The last couple are the quick selection tool and the magic wand. And just something I wanted to show you guys real quick about those ones is, so I just did the quick select tool. So my cursor is super small right now. If I hit the bracket keys, which are just to the right of the letter P, I can make the brush bigger or smaller, so it helps make that tool more useful. But when I click, you can see it kind of just selected a whole part there. And every time I click, it adds to that selection. So that's kind of cool. Let me deselect that. The magic wand kind of will do something different, but you'll notice if I click in a different area, it gets rid of that original selection and makes a new one. If I want it to kind of act like the quick select tool where it I can add to the selection, the way I'm going to do that is hold down Shift on my keyboard, and you'll see that it just gave me a plus sign. So then now, while holding down Shift, if I click, it adds to that selection. If I hold down Alt, so I was just holding down Shift to add to it, if I hold down Alt, you'll see it gives me a minus, which will subtract from that selection. So most of these selection tools have that same capability of, if you hold down Shift, it will add to the photo or to the selection, and if you hold down Alt, it will subtract from the selection. So that's a quick overview on how to use the different selection tools and how to complete this selection tool assignment in Canvas.